Hey everyone! Today, I want to talk about some of the design and planning basics that people learn when they first start working in a costume shop. I learned to sew primarily by volunteering in a costume shop, so sometimes I talk to cosplayers about sewing and I realize how much practical knowledge I completely take for granted. And some of this stuff I learned while volunteering at a shop in high school, some of it in college, and some I have just picked up along the way. The general theme here is practicality in the production phase and in performance. Costume shops, especially in theater, do not have large budgets or long build periods, and they have to be able to churn out a lot for very little money and in very little time. I have had anywhere from 3 weeks to 4 months once. That was lovely. And when we pass clothes off to the actors, they have to look right and be lightweight, breathable, washable, or cleanable. They cannot impede the actor's movements unreasonably. They have to be safe. They have to be sturdy enough to be abused night after night for the whole run. It's a lot. So, to achieve all of this, here's what we do. Planning and organizing, idiot-proofing, we have to factor in human needs. So, first, theaters have production calendars, deadlines, and a lot of meetings. There are planning deadlines in design and production meetings and dates by when you need to have your final designs and budgets finished and approved. And then there are hard deadlines like dress rehearsals, where the actors will get to work with their almost totally complete costumes. And then the biggest non-negotiable final deadline of all, which is opening night. In the costume shop, we put the show's renderings up on the wall where we can easily reference them. And renderings is just what we call the costume designer's sketches for each costume. Here's an example of two of mine. Plus, we have all of our research, notes, receipts, measurement sheets, etc., all of it gathered in a large binder, which we call the Bible for reasons. But each show has a show Bible, and we keep those for basically forever, so that when we remount shows or need to reference them, we have all of that info right at hand. It is not uncommon for costume shops to have to build or buy reinforced bookshelves because the weight of those slowly accumulating show Bibles is tearing shelves off the wall. Facts. We also have pieces lists separating out who wears what and how they are washed or cleaned all the way down to undershirts and socks. If you want to see an example, click the link or scroll down to the description. You probably won't need this if you're just making things for yourself, but if you're making a costume for someone else, it is great to give them a list of all of the pieces and how to care for them. I have also worked in some shops with huge builds, and we have had to have large printed Excel charts on the wall with a row for each piece and a labeled column for each thing that needs to be done to it, like buy, pattern, cut out, first fitting, second fitting, distress, etc. We cross off those tasks as we go, and that helps a lot when we are coming up fast on opening night, and we need to know how many late nights we're going to need to work to get all of that done. When I am working on an involved cosplay, I have to do exactly the same thing. For my Sansa cosplay, I had to separate this thing into 10 different pieces. Dress. Dress embroidery. Werewood sleeve embroidery. Cape. Wolf. Breastplate. Needle. Wig. Crown. And gloves. There was no way I could constantly stay on top of that many things by just trusting that my brain could do it without help. My brain is not a trustworthy brain. It gets real distracted by how much fun it is to do the thing that's in front of me, and the next thing I know, whoops, that should have taken 2 hours. Why is it a week later? Oh, but it's so pretty now. It was worth it. Oh my God, how am I going to do the rest of this in 3 days? Ha! Yeah, that's why. Anyway, for Sansa, I just made a miniature spreadsheet and I taped it to the wall of my sewing area. It was maybe the size of an index card, but it made it so much easier to zoom my obsessive hyper-focusing ADHD project brain out and think about how much do I have left to do in 2 months or 4 weeks or 3 days. If you want to see my list, there is a link in the description. Things I knew I didn't need to do were X'd out beforehand. Stuff I had to buy was individually listed, and then I just crossed things off in person as I finished them. I love crossing off things so much. Do you ever add extra details that you were going to do anyway onto lists just so you can cross them off with panache? Good, see? I knew I wasn't alone. Second, what we build in costume shops has to be idiot-proof. Every actor, myself included, has made, impressively stupid mistakes. Because, if we're focusing on keeping our costumes safe primarily, we are not, acting. And it may sound weird, but a lot of good costume engineering is about making the costumes as unnoticeable as possible. I kid you not, I once had to embroider decorative military trimmings onto a jacket for hours, and hours with a big ol' zigzag stitch around tiny tight circles because people were so worried about the actor getting caught potentially on buttons. Buttons. So we had to fake buttons. It's fine. Most of the time, the things you have to plan for do make sense. An actor isn't going to be able to do his best Hamlet if the jacket is making him drown in his own sweat, And you are not going to be able to happily do your most dynamic poses for photos or, really truly enjoy interacting with people at cons who are just super excited to talk to you about the amazing breastplate that you're wearing, which they love, if you are constantly terrified that you'll crack the foam if you lift one arm too high, or if you don't dare walk without holding your long train because it'll tear when someone steps on it. It is annoying to have to think about all of this before you can get started. I know I am absolutely an impulse-driven artist, and doing it this way does not come naturally to me. But here's how I've learned to look at it. We will have to spend the mental energy dealing with these issues at some point. And if we get all this garbage out of the way in the planning process before we make or buy anything, we spend much less time overall having to deal with it. It is much easier and faster to build in stretch panels as you go instead of having to take your pants back apart halfway through. Now, great! Your costume is scheduled to be ready by the deadline and is idiot-proof. Awesome. But unless you like smelling your own fermented bacteria, or, you like canceling on events because you cannot limp that far in your shoes, we're not done yet. These are 5 things that are always on my practical costume necessities list. Shoes, washability, comfort, pockets, and wearability. 1. Shoes must have good grip to avoid slipping, and they may need insoles for comfort. This became a thing I always do because in costume shops, another person's workplace safety depends on the shoes that you give them. You can buy ridged grip pads on Amazon and use an E6000 type glue like shoe goo to glue them on. I clamp the grip pads to the shoes all around the edges, especially the front toes, while drying to make sure that they are flush and they don't come off or peel when the wearer trips over the top of the step, which they will. This type of glue takes 24 hours to cure, so do not do this right before you want to wear them. 2. Everything that touches the skin in areas of the body that sweat must be washable. And this always means undershirts, shirts, tights, and socks. It can also mean pants or other pieces like a chemise or something like that, depending on the show or the cosplay. And this one is absolutely non-negotiable in costume shops. If you cannot wash a piece, you must wear something underneath it. A nude tank top or a leotard that matches your skin is a really good basic to have. Never, ever wear a corset without a protective tank top or a strapless top underneath. Sweat aside, you will get such bad rug burn. Don't ask me how I know that one. You can guess how I know that one. Washability really sounds so nitpicky, but guys, costumes get gross. Seriously, imagine having to put on a shirt that is still damp and smelly with yesterday's sweat, and now you have to sweat in it again for up to 3 hours. That's nasty. This actually happened to me as an actor. It was right before opening when there was confusion about whether the stage manager or the costume department was responsible for laundry. And Yeah, the whole dressing room was grossed out and furious because we had put all our dirty laundry in the same dirty laundry basket and nothing had been done. And, it's way worse if it's other people's sweat plus your own. Yeah, it was unforgettable, clearly. So that's why when I do a show or when I am cosplaying, I make sure that everything next to the skin is washable. Ideally, it is also dryable, usually on low or air dry. But sometimes you just really can't get around hang drying. 3. Each costume piece needs to be breathable. It has to stretch where necessary and must allow for the full necessary range of motion. There are infinite things you can do here, but these are the few tricks that I use almost all the time. Stretch is not limited to spandex and knit fabric. A fabric really only needs a small amount of elastane, or lycra, which is the brand name, in it to give it some stretch. Like, it can be 5% and it'll have a bit of stretch. You can buy wool and brocade with stretch if you need to. And if you cannot find any fabric like that, you can always make slim side panels out of a stretchy material that kind of goes, and use your favorite non-stretch for the rest. You can make corsets with stretch panels. And in fact, I have a pattern for an antique 1880s corset that did actually have elastic hip gores. The 2 cheats I absolutely cannot live without are adding a box pleat to the center back and lining garments with power mesh. I will be doing separate short videos on each of them because I think they're awesome, so check those out if you are interested. If you are lining a bodice, a jacket, or a coat, and you are using a traditional lightweight non-stretch lining, make sure that you cut your side lining panels slightly larger across the chest and waist, so you get like a small 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch pleat in the lining, like right in the armpit and sometimes the waist. If it's a coat, definitely cut the back lining panel on the fold and then cut that panel so you're adding like 1 to 2 inches to the total width of the whole back lining panel from chest to just above the waist. And fold that fabric, that extra fabric, into a pleat at the center back of the neck when you attach it to the collar. And then sew the same thing close at the waist. Coat fabrics themselves often have at least a little stretch or at least some give to them. But habotai lining fabric, whether it's silk or polyester, like Bemberg, whatever, it really does not. So cutting this rigid lining fabric a little bigger just means that the actual fashion fabric will not be constrained by the lining. 4. Pockets. Do you think you'll need a pocket? I always ask each actor whether they will need a pocket, and if so, how many? And then I give them 1 pocket more than they asked for, because if I don't, I will get a note a week from opening saying, so we realized that in rehearsal that we actually will need a pocket in this hat. So definitely add multiple pockets to your cosplay. It really is not helpful if you have a pocket in your leather jerkin, but then you decided to leave that heavy thing off one day because it was nice, and suddenly you're walking around the con with everything in your hand or in a bright orange bag because that was all you could find, and now you've got to figure out how to hide that crap every time someone stops you and asks for a photo. Boo, no. Also, you don't want to make it that easy to lose your ID and credit card and phone. 5. Wearability. If your costume is enormous, figure out how you are going to get through doors or up escalators before you spend a year 3D printing and sanding and painting it. You can make cardboard mock-ups of anything huge that'll be rigid and could break, like anything 3D printed or vacuum formed or like sealed foam pieces. Large skirts are generally not a problem if you make them with something like hoop steel just because it flexes. I do highly recommend researching the engineering of suits of plate armor and late Victorian bustles, because a lot of thought went into making those shapes sturdy, wearable, and collapsible. They have helped me design large, very surreal structures so many times. They are actually incredibly brilliant. So, that is my list of design and planning basics. Please let me know if you have any questions. Drop me a comment down below, or if there is anything specific I have talked about that you would really like to see me talk about in more detail or demonstrate. I hope some of this has been helpful for you, and I hope you have fun sewing.